We are only 1 day away from the NBA trade deadline, and the New York Knicks have been one of the most active teams during this time, calling up different teams, thinking to themselves what particular players they could add to this roster that can help them be better come the postseason. And according to multiple reports, the Knicks are in talks right now with two teams specifically, the Detroit Pistons and the Utah Jazz. We're going to break down exactly the players they're talking about and who they could potentially add come the trade deadline. All of this and so much more today. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, go ahead and hit that subscribe button now and make sure you have notifications turned on so you don't miss a second of the new content. And now, let's get started. The Knicks are mainly speaking with two teams. And like I said, those two teams are the Utah Jazz and the Detroit Pistons. And the two players on those teams that you think to yourselves, who potentially the Knicks could be looking at? You probably know who I'm talking about already. Jordan Clarkson and Alec Burks. Now, Alec Burks, familiar face. Some of you guys, like me, have PTSD because you remember the games after games after games he started over Emmanuel quickly, and he was playing point guard for the New York Knicks. Yes, I'm scarred too, but if the Knicks could potentially steal him, get him on this roster, would he not help with the spacing? Would he not help with more shot creation? Would he not help give Jalen Brunson more of a rest when he's on the bench? I think the answer to those questions would be yes. The same thing would apply to Jordan Clarkson. And I think that's why, according to Ian Begley, those two players are the main players the New York Knicks have interest in right now. According to SNY NBA insider Ian Begley, he notes that Utah's Jordan Clarkson, according to reports, has been on the Knicks' radar. Utah's asking price for Clarkson has been high as of last month. Alec Burks is still on New York's radar at the moment. The Knicks can offer Detroit draft compensation and a package of players to get Burks. There is an element of familiarity here because Burks played and played well for Tom Thibodeau and the Knicks in 2020 to 2021. I would expect the New York Knicks and Detroit to remain engaged on Burks as we get closer to Thursday at 3 p.m. And you guys know how I like to do it. I don't like to look at just one NBA insider if I can help it. I like to see if other NBA insiders spoke about this and have said similar things. And thankfully, my guy Michael Scotto from Hoops Hype did basically confirm what Ian Begley was stating here. Here's what he mentions. According to Scotto, other Pistons in their final year that the New York Knicks have interest in include Alec Burks and Monte Morris. And according to rival executives, Burks and Morris are viewed as attainable for second-round draft pick compensation. And another NBA insider here in Fred Katz also reports the following. The Knicks have also dipped and dabbled with the Detroit Pistons' Alec Burks, according to league sources, who also would not command Grimes in return. Clearly, as Ian Begley stated there, the New York Knicks and the Detroit Pistons are currently engaged in trade talks about either Alec Burks or a couple of other players. But clearly, Alec Burks would be the main player the New York Knicks would want back, especially after you just heard that his value could be second-round picks. The New York Knicks have multiple second-round picks, and they definitely don't mind getting rid of those and keeping their first-round picks. Leon Rose loves to get players of impact on the cheap. Alec Burks, if he could be had for second-round picks, that would fit the bill for Leon Rose. But I know what you're thinking. I mentioned two teams. While I did mention Jordan Clarkson earlier on, this particular entire segment thus far has been about Alec Burks and the New York Knicks remaining engaged in their trade talks with the Detroit Pistons. So let's go ahead and give some love to Jordan Clarkson and talk about those reports as well too. The latest report and buzz comes from Tony Jones of The Athletic, who was asked if Jordan Clarkson would be open to the idea of being traded to the New York Knicks. And according to him, he states, "I can tell you just from my conversations with people around the situation. I think that Jordan Clarkson would welcome a trade to the New York Knicks if that's how it would go down. There's another team out west he would welcome a trade to. I'm not going to say the name of that team, and the reason why I'm not going to say the name of that team is because there's very little chance of that trade happening." I mean, he's clearly talking about the Los Angeles Lakers. And the reason that trade is not going to happen is because for that trade to happen, the Los Angeles Lakers would have to give up multiple players and multiple draft picks. And I don't think they're willing to do that for a player like Jordan Clarkson. And they've mentioned it. It's been reported that the Los Angeles Lakers do not want to move on from D'Lo or other players in draft compensation unless they're getting back an all-star caliber player. If that's not the type of player on the table, then they're likely not going to go after them. So Jordan Clarkson going to LA, not going to happen. So I don't blame Tony Jones for not wanting to mention Los Angeles because I do agree with him. It's unlikely to happen. There's very little chance for that happening. But he did mention the New York Knicks. And the reason he mentioned the Knicks is because there is a high chance that Jordan Clarkson, come tomorrow, might be a New York Knick, might be donning that orange and blue. You may not like it, but these are the reports coming out right now from guys like Ian Bagley, Michael Scotto, and Fred Katz. Those are all NBA insiders that cover the New York Knicks and other teams around the league. So if they're saying it, you have to take it as credible, and you have to take it that that's exactly what the New York Knicks are looking to do right now. So right now, to recap, no pun intended, the Knicks are talking to two main teams, the Detroit Pistons, likely about Alec Burks, and the Utah Jazz, likely about Jordan Clarkson. And if you're asking me, between those two, which one of them, come the trade deadline tomorrow, would most likely be a New York Knick? That's a very simple answer. It really comes down to price. I will say this though, I believe Clarkson and the Knicks' interest in him is very high. Clarkson wants to come to New York, he wants to play for the Knicks, and clearly the New York Knicks have interest in him. They want to trade for him. But I think the only thing that would stop that would be Jordan Clarkson's price and what potential deal that the Utah Jazz want to get back from the New York Knicks. If it's not something that's too debilitating, if they're not asking for too much, especially given the fact he's on a down year, they really shouldn't be asking for too much anyways. But with Danny Ainge, you already know how that goes. So he might be asking for a lot in regards to a trade for Clarkson. If that happens, and you just heard that Alec Burks potentially could go for a couple of seconds, if you weigh both options on the table, and you're asking me who the Knicks potentially would go after, it likely would be Alec Burks because of the value, not because they want him more than they want Jordan Clarkson. I think if both of their values were equal and the same, Jordan Clarkson would be a New York Knick right now. But because that's not the case, they have to weigh that. They have to weigh it based off of fit, based off of how they would do on this roster, how much they would fit under Tom Thibodeau, and a couple of other factors. And if you weigh all of those options, and you weigh value as well too, it's hard not to understand why the New York Knicks would probably target and go after Alec Burks more than they would do that over Jordan Clarkson. If Clarkson value came down just a little bit, I think they would go after him. But his value is just too high at the moment. And that's exactly what Ian Bagley reported. He said it was significantly high. I don't know what significantly high means for Ainge, but if I had to guess, it would likely be a couple of first-round picks and maybe Evan Fournier and maybe another young player. And if that's what it's going to take to get Jordan Clarkson, I'm out on it. Leon Rose is likely out on it, and I don't think he's going to get moved if that's what Ainge is looking for. And according to Bagley, as you can clearly see here, the Knicks have interest in Jordan Clarkson, and Alec Burks is somebody the Knicks still have on their radar. Ian Bagley even closed out this quote by stating, "I would expect New York and Detroit to remain engaged on Burks as we get closer to Thursday at 3 p.m. Now, this is the NBA trade deadline we're talking about, so anything could happen. A player's value that's currently high could go very much down in the next few days. And if that happens, you never know what happens with the New York Knicks and their trade targets and plans. They could be looking at Burks and Clarkson now, and maybe another player that they're looking at, his value drops significantly, and they jump to that player. Anything could happen, but at least for right now, we know it's very clear. The New York Knicks are engaged with Detroit on Burks. They're engaged with Utah on Jordan Clarkson. Those two are some of the players the New York Knicks have been linked to for the last few weeks. And clearly, if their value meets Leon Rose's asking price, they will go ahead and they will make the trade for one of those players. They'll be a New York Knick, and that's going to be that. And we're going to move on to the rest of the season with only that addition. Because like the New York Knicks have basically indicated in nearly every report that's come out, they want to make an addition. They want to make an impact, and they want to add talent to this roster. but they don't want to do it in a way that's going to affect them adding a star or superstar in the offseason. And because of that, they're going to be making very limited but smart choices in regards to what talent they want to add to this roster. There are other targets on the board that I would rather the New York Knicks look at and go after. And maybe they're looking at those targets right now, but they're waiting for their value to drop if they do. And if they don't, then they have their backup plans, at least it looks like, in Jordan Clarkson and clearly in Alec Burks. And I think worst case scenario, if nothing else, and they can't get any other deal done, Alec Burks will return to New York and he will be a New York Knick again. Because at the very least, that's an addition that will help the New York Knicks now, potentially in the future, and definitely come the postseason. So that's what I anticipate the New York Knicks to do come the trade deadline tomorrow. They have their targets in mind, and clearly they're having discussions with two main teams right now, the Jazz and Detroit. That could definitely change come tomorrow, but right now, according to Ian Begley, these are the latest updates that we have. What do you guys think about these updates and that the New York Knicks are mainly talking with Utah and Detroit? Let me know in the comments below, guys, because honestly, I would love to hear from you. But that's going to do it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, go ahead and smash that like button, leave a comment below, and of course, guys, please subscribe to the channel. Until next time, Knick fans. Peace.